Imagine you're a young person who's looking for opportunities in your country, but there's nothing. And then this international organization comes and tells you, listen, we have a program that is recruiting young Africans to come to our country and work in different service industries. You can work in transportation, you can work in hospitality, you can work in catering, and so many other things. And we're going to give you hands-on training. On top of that, we're going to pay you and ensure that you actually get what you deserve. Because HR representatives from this program actually visited your country, you know that it's legit, and you sign up, and next thing you know, you're on a flight to Russia. But when you get to Russia, you discover that what they said is actually not what's happening on the ground. For starters, you find yourself working at a factory that is manufacturing drones that are being used in the war against Ukraine. The conditions are poor, the service is poor, and on top of that, what they told you is not what is happening. But you are confused because this is a program that was actually legit. Sounds like a movie? Trust me, it's not.
Since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, alarming reports have emerged of African students and migrant workers allegedly being coerced into fighting against Ukraine. Russian officials have been accused of threatening not to renew visas for African nationals who refuse to enlist, leaving them with little choice but to comply. Recently, fresh allegations surfaced regarding a Russian program called the Alabuga Start, under scrutiny for its suspected involvement in human trafficking. Although marketed as an educational and professional training initiative, investigations reveal a far darker reality behind the program's glossy advertisements. The Wall Street Journal reported that by mid-2023, Russia's military had ramped up the production and use of cheap suicide drones, such as the Lancet drones, in response to Ukraine's counteroffensives. As production demand soared, so did the need for labor, leading Russia to allegedly exploit foreign nationals, in particular young African women aged between 18 and 22, to fill the gaps.
A new facility in the town of Yelabuga is getting ready to ramp up Russia's production of drones. The White House says the plans will manufacture Iranian drones, with operations starting as soon as early 2024. Russia's invasion of Ukraine showed how inexpensive unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, were effective on the battlefield for reconnaissance and for attacks. Aviation experts say, unlike Ukraine, Russia's use of unmanned systems got off to a slow start. Here's how Moscow is catching up in the drone race by building up arsenals of low-cost explosive drones.
In November 2023, media reports revealed that Russia had partnered with Iran to manufacture drones in the Alabuga Special Economic Zone in Turkmenistan. Through the Alabuga Start program, African women were reportedly recruited under the disguise of educational opportunities. Social media and other platforms promoted the program as a legitimate pathway to career advancement. Yet participants were allegedly deceived about their roles. Instead of education, these women found themselves working under harsh and dangerous conditions, assembling drones and weapons in the Alabuga Multi-Facility Economic Zone. Investigations by News Central TV and the Associated Press have highlighted the grim reality faced by these women who are as young as 16, subjected to grueling labor in unsafe environments. Others are African prisoners who were promised pardons after serving 6 months in the military, only to discover their contracts were indefinite. These accounts paint a disturbing picture of exploitation and abuse fueled by deceitful recruitment tactics.
Associated Press that look into a harrowing and often overlooked chapter of the ongoing conflict in wartime Russia. In a desperate bid to fill wartime labor shortages, young women, some as young as 16, find themselves ensnared in a system that compels them to assemble weapons under harsh and unforgiving conditions. as recruitment efforts sweep through regions like South Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and even Sri Lanka. Serious concerns have arisen about the ethical implications surrounding this targeted approach, which preys on vulnerable populations believed to be easier to control. Now, joining us to discuss this is the president of General Industries Workers Union of South Africa's Mamelwe Sebie. Join us all the way from Gauteng. Thank you so much, Sebie, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
It's a pleasure. Now, I'm going to start off by asking, what are the main causes of young women from specific African nations being the target of recruitment, and what socioeconomic factors will make them particularly vulnerable to such exploitation?
It is the poverty of the African working class. And I think you just have to look what's happening across the continent when you are faced with devastating levels of poverty and unemployment, young people idling, wasting their life, being wasted away without any opportunity for meaningful and gainful employment, let alone career advancement. And therefore, sort of, opportunities arise. And it's understandable and almost unavoidable that they will seek them out, they will take advantage of them with the hope that through them, they could at least have some form of gainful employment at the same time as advancing themselves economically through earning of income, which otherwise they will be without, which in many African countries where there is not even a social protection in a form of grants for the unemployment, lack of job opportunities, employment and income, by means of which is almost a death sentence. And for this,
despite the abundance of mineral resources in many African countries, human trafficking persists due to the poverty and the underutilization of these resources. The failure to translate natural wealth into widespread economic opportunities leaves many vulnerable to exploitation.
And how does the recruitment of these women intersect with the issues of human trafficking? Because it's a very serious issue. And of course, labor exploitations. Are there certain indicators that suggest these recruitment efforts may be taking place within a larger trafficking framework?
Well, it depends on what you mean by that, because the reality is that the entire system of wage labor, it always has those elements of human trafficking, because to the extent that, for instance, here in South Africa, people through years of colonialism and apartheid, they were, dispossessed of their land and stripped of any means of, earning income other than by rendering their labor to industries from mining farms that were European owned in the past and continue to be predominantly white owned 30 years into a black majority rule. And in that sense, there is always element of human trafficking, because what we have here is not people that are forced, it's people that have been lured by the prospects of income. Adults that consent formally, but the reality is that they are forced in this situation by economic circumstances beyond their control. And I think this is an indictment on African government that decades after independence, we still have this situation where we are a slave colonies. We are a slave colonies of big imperialist powers that could come and take our people for wars that have nothing to do with them, for wars that are not probably even agreeable to them, because of no any other income and of course job opportunities available in this country. And this is not unique to Russia. And I think it's in the context of war in Ukraine. We saw in the past year or so when Israeli regime went to recruit people in Malawi with the cooperations of the government in that country. And in this case, I see at least those people are being paid directly. In the case of Malawi, the Malawi Israeli deal, you had a situation wherein it was said that actually the money or portion of the money would actually go to government. And this is the reality with many of these arrangements where African governments, like the old kings of the past, who were trading in slaves in their own people. They are selling our people to be slaughtered in wars of imperialism everywhere across the world.
Russian investigative outlet Protocol reported in July 2023 that the Alabuga Special Economic Zone drone factory was staffed largely by foreign recruits. Some African media institutions have turned their attention to the Alabuga Start program, uncovering allegations of maltreatment, racism, sexism, and violence. The recruitment advertisements do not disclose the true nature of the work, leaving young African women unaware of the dangers until it's too late. By the first quarter of 2024, over 180 women from African countries such as Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria, and Zambia had reportedly joined the program. Zambia's Makande Center for Investigative Journalism confirmed that at least 4 Zambian girls have enrolled, although the country's immigration department has yet to provide exact figures. Alarmingly, newer targets now include Malawi, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Ghana, among others, further expanding the reach of this exploitation. Evidence of a Telegram group used to recruit participants sheds light on how the program spreads its net. Videos of current participants praising the program are shared in the group, which boasts over 21,000 subscribers from across Africa. Many applicants first encounter the program on Twitter before being funneled into the Telegram group, where promoters emphasize that the program is exclusively for females. The few men in the group have expressed frustration over their exclusion, ironically unaware of the true horrors awaiting those selected. Efforts to trace the local networks facilitating these recruitments have revealed links to organizations like the Zambian Russian Graduates Alumni Association. However, when contacted, representatives declined to comment, further shredding the program in secrecy.
I'm saying I'll pass. Thank you. I'm saying I'll pass. Thank you.
Despite mounting evidence and investigations by journalists, many African governments have remained silent, or worse, complicit in this recruitment process. Whether through ignorance or indifference, their inaction has enabled a system that preys on the dreams and vulnerabilities of young African women. These women leave their homes with hopes of a better future, only to find themselves trapped in exploitation and despair. Their stories are not just numbers or statistics. They are about lives uprooted, dreams crushed. Until African leaders confront this issue with the seriousness it deserves, the cycle of exploitation will persist. The Alabuga Start program and others like it represent more than a humanitarian crisis. They are a glaring indictment of collective failure to protect the continent's daughters, sisters, and mothers from the cruel realities of human trafficking.